you're looking to find great people. So take to the chat function. That's the little box, as you can see there, with chat if you haven't used Zoom before, and give yourself a letter A, B, C, or D. So is it that there's a lack of available talent for the market in the market for you at the moment? Candidates want unrealistic salaries and benefits. Are you losing candidates to the competition, or is it that you just don't really have time and don't know what you're looking for and not quite hitting the mark? So do share your views. As I say, take to chat. Just list A, B, C, or D. Great, already some good responses coming through. Yeah, super. Yeah. Brilliant point there, Chloe. Yeah, see, good. Yeah, good. Yeah, A and B. Thank you, Elizabeth. I mean, I guess what's interesting about this question is that these are the 4 top reasons that we find with our clients are the main reasons they find are the why they're not recruiting great people. So I'm not surprised to see, particularly as you have, many of you have said that you're losing candidates to the competition. So let me talk a bit about what we're finding in the market today. And we are doing a lot of recruitment work, but I suppose the headlines for us at the moment is that the reality is that the talent in the market is low, and that is causing a real problem where companies are coming out of COVID and some of the other challenges they've had last year with vacancies to fill. But what's also a challenge is that people are, as you may be experiencing, starting to want to move around themselves and find different roles. And there was a bit of an exodus almost after COVID, where people were seeing that they wanted a change given everything that they'd gone through. So it's a real perfect storm, if you like. There's a lack of talent because the talent that people do have, they're doing everything they can to hold on to them. But also there's a lot of opportunity. So candidates are being swept up. Some examples of that, I am recruiting for a couple of board level roles, and an agency I spoke to yesterday told me that it seems that they only are able to find one good candidate, but those good candidates, or that good candidate, is being swept up instantly. And I'm talking to other agencies where it's the case that candidates will go through a process, make all the positive noises about wanting to join a client, and then we'll have 4 or 5 offers on the table that they choose from, and invariably let down 3 or 4 people in the process. What we are seeing in the market is that there's much more ambitious, what I call ambitious applications, which are where people that won't be necessarily qualified for a role or might be looking for a career change are far more likely, I think, at the moment to apply for roles rather than to step back and decide maybe it's not quite for them. So people are definitely using the market to test whether they might be able to move into a career change situation, maybe a more senior role. And actually that's quite a shrewd move because, as I've just said, given the way the market is and companies finding it much more difficult to recruit, we are seeing clients are much more open to taking on candidates where traditionally they may not have taken them on when the market wasn't so bonkers. What we are also seeing is that candidates are clear about what they want. So one of the big pieces that's coming through is that everybody at the moment wants hybrid working. And even when I'm talking to agencies and again talking to candidates, one of the first questions that I'm being asked is, what's the hybrid working situation? And I'm hearing about all kinds of crazy negotiations where candidates, for example, last week was based in Glasgow, agreed to work for a company in London, and ultimately then agreed that they would come down 1 day in every month to be in the office. So it really has all the traditional view, if you like, of how things are working has completely turned on its head. And I suppose my, my kind of recommendation to you, if you like, is we've moved really away from a situation where in the market you would have a role and you would find the candidate to fit the role. What the market is now, basically, in my view, is that you have to find the candidate and then make the role fit the candidate, which is a very different approach to what some people have been really used to, because as I said, because of this lack of talent out there. One of the other interesting things we're seeing in the market is the need for speed. So because the talent is fairly scarce, companies do need to respond quickly. So where you are getting candidates that look like they will fit the bill, then you need to move very quickly to secure those candidates, because people are literally being snapped up on the same day. So I spoke to another agency yesterday, and they told me that they took a role on with a company in the morning. A candidate applied for the role via a web advert at lunchtime, were interviewed in the afternoon, and that candidate was offered in the evening. So that's as quick as some of these things are happening. So you must not wait. I've got experience where we've lost potentially quite good candidates just because companies or hiring managers have been slow to respond to their applications. And as I said, it's all about hybrid working. So it's, I was just looking at some statistics earlier that generally twice as many under 35s want to be working in a hybrid environment than over 35. So dare I say, the younger population of people are far more interested in being able to combine work and life, which even that is, a question, I think, around what is work-life balance, because everything has kind of mixed itself into one thing. So the ability to work at home, go for a dentist appointment, wait for your Amazon delivery, and all the other things that happens, it all tends to merge into one. And I think people are looking far more for roles that suit that sort of lifestyle more than a more compartmentalized view that maybe the older people amongst us, myself included, would have been understanding was a 9 to 5, and you do everything else at the weekend. That environment has definitely gone. Do pop in the chat, as I said, if you've got any particular other experience around what's happening in the market that you might want to share. To finish on this piece, what I'm also seeing in the market is that you may, for example, be going out, and I have this experience where we are recruiting for a finance director for a particular client, and it would have been usual that requirement was very specific, and ultimately, obviously, the person that meets that requirement gets the job. What we are definitely seeing now in that example, and all of the examples I'm working on, is that companies are having to think more broadly about, is it the right role that, is it right for the role that I have, that I require these 4 on 5 things? Back to this point around scarcity of talent, that companies are having to think more laterally around, if I forsake one piece of experience or one qualification, does that open up a larger talent pool? And the resounding answer to that from me is absolutely yes, it does. And there's a call then to think much more laterally about where you're looking for the right people. And I'll come on to that. I'll come on to that next. Good question here from Jacko. Do you find that recruiters are looking across the board and more for candidates? Yes, I do. I find that conversation is more and more present, maybe more in some sectors like social care, or hospitality. We see that, where all eyes again are maybe on Europe to see, and beyond, to see whether they can use the visa, the current visa system to bring in talent. But yeah, I think that's something that's growing stronger and stronger, that we can't, to be totally honest, ignore, is the use of overseas talent, particularly on the positive side, where there is this more move towards hybrid working or non-specific location working. It does, I think, call into question whether we should be looking beyond our borders. So great question there, thank you. So what then are we seeing is the most effective way to find good talent? And there's some things, first and foremost, I think, as I think about who's doing it well, one of the things that stands out often is that the employer will be a recognized brand, or will be maybe in a particular sector that's seen to be a leading light in that sector. So whilst I think we are coming away from the days where people want to work for big brands, you know, the Googles, the Marks and Spencer, and all those other things, nonetheless, brand reputation and brand positioning, I think, is really key. So it might sound like a strange thing to say, but if you're thinking about recruiting and maybe why you're not attracting talent, maybe look at how you're presenting yourselves as an employer in the local community. And if you're running ads, making sure that you're pulling out the things that are unique to you and what you do. So an example of that, again, is that I do work with a social care charity, an amazing social care charity. And one of the things that we really dialed up on is just the amazing work that that charity does. And it's interesting that in that, it's really then connected with people's desire to want to give something back. So that's been a great way indirectly to attract different sorts of talent. There's no coming away that pay and benefits will also be a big factor. You will no doubt have seen in the press and other places that there's been quite an artificial inflation of salaries. I think it's actually quietening down a little bit, but nonetheless, salaries are certainly more inflated. Talking to, again, some of the agencies that I talked to over the last couple of weeks, some of them are talking about a £10,000 to £15,000 increase on roles that will have been the same role maybe this time last year. But what is interesting to note is that it isn't all about pay. In a recent survey study that was done, it was shown that people are looking for new roles, not just because of competitive pay, but also for development opportunities. And actually, those are the two leading reasons. And for the first time ever, development opportunities ranked at the same level as wanting more pay and benefits. And so one of the big lessons there is to be really driving up what you can provide to talented people in your organization so they can progress their own careers, because the whole kind of world of work has moved in this direction where people are far more tuned in really to what they want out of their careers. And it's far more the case, I think, that people are moving around organizations to pick up on bits of skills training or experience that almost sees them having a portfolio career, you know, where they've gone and done different things in different places. And I find that with some clients, that is an issue. You know, some clients are still in a place where, for example, they see that it should be more a job for life mentality. But I'm sad to say that that's not any longer the case. And so we do have to find a way to be slightly more accepting, I think, of the fact that people will move around. And actually, that can be a good thing. You know, if we're open to a shorter tenure, we can sometimes adapt our training and development opportunities or our policies to allow for that. And it's a more transparent, there's more transparency then in the relationship you have with your people. So something maybe to think about there. You might want to think about, on that vein, what are you offering that might be different? How are you being seen as a leader in people practices? And I've mentioned it a few times, but brands like Google don't waste time in telling us how they're innovating around people management. And actually that is an attractive proposition for people that want something different. So think about how you in your market, in your area, maybe in your geographical location, might be seen as the go-to employer. I'll talk a little bit about that next. The other thing to be mindful of is that, and I mentioned this earlier, there's a much greater move by people to want to get more into this portfolio career situation. And so candidates may come across your desk that maybe wouldn't readily be seen as the right fit for the job that you might be looking for. And we have to, I think, now be thinking slightly more broadly about whether those people will be good for us. what I'm finding, as I said earlier, is that where we might maybe at one time have looked for quite technical skills, so finance might be an example, the very talented professions like architecture or accountancy, etc., where the technical requirement is high, is not now just the be all and end all. You know, it's where talent is low, it is scarce. You will want to think about maybe dialing back potentially on the requirement for that experience to dial up, finding the right person that has the right attributes and the right potential for the future, so that whilst they might not be 100% fit for the role that you're looking for, they might be 80%, and then you should be thinking about what do you infill for that 20% that gets them to where you want them to be. So those are the things mainly that we found are the most effective way to find the good talent at the moment in the market. But one of the questions that I often ask my clients is how do you know that what you need is actually what you need? And this might sound like a simple and maybe slightly strange question to ask, but it's always well worth taking a step back and thinking, if we know, for example, that the market is a tough environment for finding the right people, if we know, for example, cost is a factor, then before you press go on that vacancy, is it really what you need? And it's surprising, I find with clients, that actually when people stop and think about that, often the answer is no, probably not. And I know also from some of the experience we're having with clients that where roles are very difficult to fill, they are in actual fact having to adapt the role so that they can find the right candidates. So as always, where you're looking for people, the first thing you will want to be thinking about is the vacancy right for right now? The other big thing that we always advocate is that ideally you will want to have a pipeline of internal talent so that you can fill the key roles if people move on. And this is a little bit, I think, that's also missing for me with the work we do with clients, is that there's not maybe a big enough appreciation of, if we develop the talent we've got and we look after them, we won't be in these horrible situations where when roles become live, senior roles, most usually, we don't have people to fill it. So the piece around talent and succession is, I think, really starts often internally. So to have a think about, do you have people internally, even if they're maybe not going to quite make the grade at the point of immediately promoting them, can they grow into roles so that they, so that they can be your next, your next director or your next supervisor or manager. So be creative and think very differently. Would be my counsel there. So turning then to what we're seeing as the most effective ways to find talent. Once again, anything I think that was remotely traditional, i.e. we'd put an ad in the newspaper, a card in the job centre, something on LinkedIn, is really not, not the only way now. And the most effective methods we're finding to get to candidates is going to be what we refer to as multi-channel. So you really will be wanting to think about using a combination of LinkedIn, the usual job websites. The other things that we do in my business is we use Facebook. We use different Facebook groups, if you like, local Facebook groups to advertise. Because the big point is that, and a question to ask yourself is the place that I'm advertising going to get to the most people that I can? And that for me at the moment is the big thing, is how do we get to as many people as we, as we can? But the question also beyond that is, for example, if I am looking for a full-time person, why does it need to be full-time? And therefore, why don't I, for example, advertise in a mums group on Facebook, of which there are many local mums groups, for example, where you may be able to find someone that can work 10 till 4, or someone that could job share with somebody else. There's a whole community, there's loads of communities of people that we, I think, inadvertently miss out because sometimes we're a bit too focused on what I need is a permanent full-time person. And if you're picking up what I'm kind of been saying up to this point, what you'll pick up is that actually, if we're not thinking differently, we are only getting to a small selection of people, and you do need to cast your net wide. So when you're thinking about, is it the right role? And you're thinking about, okay, I think it's permanent, but what about 2 part-timers, fixed term, contractors, interns? The other thing to think about is, am I reaching as many people as I can? Am I getting into the underrepresented communities, for example? Could I be using students? What about return to work, population, or those that have come out of the criminal justice system? All of those things are worth exploring, because believe me, this is not an environment at the moment where you can afford just to focus on a very specifically set group of people, because you are going to take, it will take you potentially a long time to find the right individual. So on that point then, just back over to you, I'm interested to hear, what have you found to be the most effective method of finding good people? So drop in the chat so that we can all kind of share in the experiences you're having. What have you found to be the most effective method for finding good people? So interested to hear your comments on that. There's no right or wrong, so do feel free to share. Any creative solutions we've missed? Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, Iffy, great shout. Referrals. Yeah, spot on. Safraz, referrals, good. LinkedIn, absolutely, Iffy. Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting with referrals, isn't it? It's definitely dialed up. That's good. Referrals, yeah, good. Thanks, Sashi. Some good answers there. I mean, I think there's no one way, but definitely, as you're picking up, the use of word of mouth is really powerful. The use of LinkedIn, which we use as a business often, again, is really powerful. I don't know that I've found one particular method. I think the days where you maybe have gone to an agency and they would confidently tell you that they'll work exclusively or else have gone, or just using, say, CV library, all of that's gone. All of those things, I think, have gone. It really, at the moment, in the current market for me, is about using as many channels as you can to find the right people, but also thinking more strategically, I think, about looking at your own team and developing your people internally, so that where you do have these roles, you ideally have someone that can fit in. I will just say again, some of the real wins we've had, not just in my clients, but in my own business, is where we've looked in different pools, where we've looked at return to work mums, or working from home mums, or part-timers, or any of the permutations of that. There are some fascinating and amazing people out there to pick from that maybe won't be on the CV library because they're not looking for a permanent job or are looking for something different. So just to kind of reiterate, do make sure that you use those. Okay, so a few kind of do's and don'ts around how to deal with candidates. I mentioned earlier that one of the things that we need to be doing is getting to them quickly, but also the counter of that, because of how bonkers the market is that I'm also seeing that some clients are maybe making rushed decisions, and that can end badly, as I'm sure you know. So do make sure you respond to candidates as quickly as you can. do make sure that you that you are not making rush decisions, I guess, here. The other thing, I guess, just in terms of a little bit of housekeeping that we want to make sure that we're doing is that so often in smaller businesses, and understandably so, managers may not be trained to conduct good, thorough interviews or do things like CV sifting. And that is a dangerous area sometimes to be in, where I'm sure inadvertently people will be asking some maybe unacceptable questions like, I don't know, are you going to be having a baby in the next 6 months? Or, you get the gist, I'm sure. But you want to make sure that your managers are properly trained to be able to deal with do good interviews, look at CV sifting. And the big area that you will always want to make sure we are avoiding in anything, let alone in recruitment, is that there's not inadvertently discrimination going on. And sometimes even with the most innocent of views where people aren't trained, that can often be where the potholes are. So do go back and make sure that your managers are clear about what is and isn't acceptable around the hiring piece. With the way that the market is, one of the things that we're also seeing, though, that's I think problematic, just worth calling out here, is that we're seeing more CV fraud, where people are applying for roles and actually they arrive in organizations. And we had a case recently where that individual certainly wasn't who they said they were, and the experience they had certainly wasn't the experience that shone through when they were working for the client. We were able to deal with that quickly, and the individual moved on. But I have also been in organizations where people have joined and defrauded the company for money and gone off never to be seen again. So in the madness, I suppose, of what's going on, and this is, I guess, the point I'm driving at, is do make sure you're doing your reference checking. If you are regulated, that you're doing your DBS or other checks, taking the time to, I guess, satisfy yourself that the people that are coming through are who they say they are. Because I think I read recently that it's estimated about 54% of people will be telling small fibs to great big whoppers on their CVs. So that's a lot of people if you think how many people you might be interviewing, 54%. Do please watch out. The counter is also that where we get recruitment wrong ourselves, so where I mentioned we cannot at any point discriminate against applicants, that doesn't come without a risk of claim. So it can be the case that, for example, if an individual takes a discrimination claim, then the tribunal payout for that can be unlimited. That's not also just in terms of discrimination. That could be a problem, but you will also, just thinking about speedy hiring, and I'm sure we've all had experience of this, where you make a decision in haste, that person doesn't quite work out, and then you're back on the sort of hamster's wheel of finding someone new. That can cost, we estimate, about £10,000 to £15,000 per hire. So that's a lot of money to waste if you're not making the right recruitment decisions, or you're rushing the process, or actually you get to the other end of the process and think, well, I've got someone, but I don't quite think they're right for the job, or the job's not what I want them to do. So again, just be mindful that you need some thoughts and things so to keep you out of the risk. The other thing to think about, and this, I think I'm calling this out because I'm seeing this more, is that today's candidates are far more savvy about sharing their views with the rest of the world if they've had bad experiences with interviews. So you'll probably be aware, for example, of the website Glassdoor, where people can leave comments about employers. And candidates are, I think, what I'm seeing, being far more savvy about doing background checks for the companies that they're going to see. So you want to be aware that the treatment that the treatment that someone feels they've had today may stop them being a customer tomorrow. And then there's that whole piece around, if you have something good happen to you, you might tell 2 people, but if you have a bad experience, you might tell 10. And that can be very brand damaging. And so think carefully about how you're dealing with candidates. What does it say about you and your organization? What is the candidate experience? And ideally making sure that no matter what, that candidate walks away from your business feeling like they've had a really good experience, even if they haven't been successful in their application. But do beware of social media. As I said, in today's world, as you know, people don't think twice often about sharing their views or bad experiences, and that can be very brand damaging. You will have seen, I'm sure, many, many examples of that. So just be aware of that. And some of that all is quite easily managed. Some of that's all quite easily managed through good communication with candidates. So again, do make sure that you keep them at the center of your process. So just kind of closing then, I want to talk a bit about, so I'm just going to go to the chat. We have a question here from Iffy, which great, we've responded to. Fantastic. Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Iffy. So I guess in summary then, some top tips to retain your talent now. This is really where it's at, if you like. These top tips for me are recognition of where the world of work has moved to. And although these will be obvious, I will call out again that some of the clients that we work with are, some of this is uncomfortable for people. Maybe people work in environments where flexible working doesn't lend itself well to the way the business operates or its reason for being, the way it needs to respond to customers. But nonetheless, there's no doubt people are looking for much more flexibility in their working arrangements. We are not, I think, ever gonna come back from that. So do make sure you're being flexible with people. There's generally a way. If you've got basically an amazing candidate, given the market as it is today, and they're talking to you about flexibility, you should be taking those conversations really seriously. Make sure that you are offering clear career progression for the people internally. I've talked a number of times about development from within, but what you really want to do here, and a thing to go away and think about, is how sticky have I made my organization so that people don't want to leave? And I will tell you that if you want to look in the obvious areas first, go and look at the kind of career progression that you're offering. Go and look at how your culture maybe looks and feels in terms of mental health and well-being. Go and look at how your flexible working arrangements are set out. What's the general management response to people when they say that they want a little bit of flexibility? And also, obviously, how competitive is the salary and the benefits? But that on its own, I think is, if you like, quieting down the reason people are leaving. It's the other stuff above it that you really want to go and make sure you've got covered, because I think these are the things that are easily in your control. And if you've got these things in your control, given the way the market is with the talent shortage, you really want to do everything you can to keep your people. If that means that there's some change needed, maybe a bit of a cultural shift in different areas, my strong recommendation to you would be that you might want to think about that. Because no one, if I was to be frank, that we're working with on recruitment is having anything other than a nightmare time trying to find the people that they need. And I've got clients that are still 12 months later not finding the people that they're looking for. So the pain is real. I want to just finish a bit. It might seem a bit strange, but it felt right to share it. I want to just, I guess, expand slightly on that point. We did a webinar earlier this year where I talked about what are the trends in human resources, what is it that people want, what does the future of work look like? And I've put this in because I think by understanding some of this, you can once again tailor what you're offering, how you're going to market, what your culture looks like. So I am just going to dwell on this for a few minutes. So there's a couple of big surveys done at the end of last year around where is this whole world of work going. And one of the things that come through that's interesting is that people are looking for what's referred to as much more human-centric leadership, i.e. people want to be seen as people and they want to be able to relate to leaders that will be authentic, have empathy. And this is where, if you like, in terms of the definition of good leadership, we've sort of developed or evolved more into. So why is that relevant to this point around recruiting talent? Well, it's relevant because you will want to be maybe talking to that when you're seeing your talent, talking to them about them as individuals, talking to them about how your leadership structure is set up to help them be the best they can be. I've talked a lot about development. I'm not actually going to labor this point, but the whole piece again is people are out there, then there's no doubt that people are clearer about what they're looking for and have the luxury in the market right now to go and find exactly that because of how difficult it is to, because of the kind of fact it's a candidates market. So dial up on the development piece. People are going to be far more invested in what you've got to offer if they feel like they are getting something back for them. So make sure you're focusing on that. I think the concept of hierarchy structure is fading and has been for a while, although I think it's a little bit subtle. There's this subtle move into it all being about leadership by coaching and collaboration rather than the do and tell, which is, again, I think largely a thing of the past and certainly not the ideal way to run an organization. And then flexible working, as I've kind of beat the drum about a good number of times, is here to stay, and we can't ignore it. And if we do, then we're going to be left behind because other people will be picking up the talent. So just in closing, my top tips, and we are going to share these slides with you. Be clear about what you're looking for. Be quick into the market and don't waste time, even if there's 100 other things going on. Get people in, get them interviewed, get them offered is ultimately where you need to be. Be creative and think differently. That point earlier about what are the target markets? Where could I go to find these people that I might not easily be getting to in old times, like agencies or Indeed? Where else can I go and find them? Could I be looking at apprentices? Could I be looking at the return to workers and anything in between? So think creatively and fish in at some different pools. Train your managers to recruit so that they're not making them naive but potentially difficult to deal with mistakes. And move quickly and look after the people you've got. And that is almost, I think, the golden point for me, that really and truly, if you're recruiting, ideally, it's because the organization's growing and you've got more stuff and you need more people to do it. If you're losing the people you've got, you've really got to think about why that is, because apart from the obvious impact it's having, the difficulty with finding talent in the market at the moment is such that you're far better getting to those people earlier, and because you've got control of them, than losing them and wondering why and what you're going to do next. So as I said, feel free to drop in any questions that you might have or thoughts that you might have. These webinars are designed to be quick and direct sort of experiences that we're having, hopefully in some way to help you. Just, if I may, as always, a little bit at the end about who we are. So my business is here to help. If you have challenges with recruitment or training managers, or you simply need HR advice, then we do all of those things for you. And I would be very happy to talk to you after this about where we might be able to help. We are local based. We service a lot of very different clients in a lot of different sectors, and would be happy, as I say, would be happy to help. We've had a great question from Sharon come in. How do you think AI will have impacts on the future of recruitment? I love this question, Sharon, because I think there are so many answers here. I think that you can't replace a human being, and you've got to be careful about how you use AI. I think it has its place in the recruitment process. It might be in sifting applicants, or it might be in profiling. I haven't seen anything that's worked well yet that is able to make decisions about who's right for the job. And I am also aware of some businesses locally that have tried to move into AI in recruitment, more so interestingly through doing things like doing video hiring. So, you know, a bit like, I mean, this is going to make it's going to age me, but a bit like a Big Brother or Britain's Got Talent audition tape, where you send in your video of yourself, you talk about why you're right for the job. I've seen some organizations pop up that try to take keywords out of some of those, but nothing really that's you know, that's got us to that's helping. So we will see with AI. It has a place, but I just think we personally, you can't turn everything into an artificial decision-making process. You do need people in some things. That's never going to change. So thanks for that, Sharon. As you can tell, a bit controversial views there. Sarfraz, please share prices. Absolutely, with pleasure. I'll do that after this. Iffy, what's your view on personality profiling? Yeah, great question. My view in summary is that you will want to pick out some of the better known profiling tools such as DISC. So we use DISC as a business, which works well for people. Most importantly, with personality profiling, it should never be the sole reason that you either select or deselect a candidate. So it has its place. I think it works well with leadership recruitment, for example, or if you have a team and you want to make sure someone's fitting in with the team dynamic, then brilliant, you know, by all means do that, but do not use a profile to, as I said, to select or deselect candidates. I think there are some broader variations that you can use to test people's suitability. So we will use, we've used role plays with candidates. We often ask senior candidates to make presentations. We've sent people in to do work with. We've let people have coffee with teams. So there's all sorts of things you can do that could be low to no cost that give you variation of view on the candidates that you're seeing. But good shout there, Afi. Thank you. So just to say, I got sidetracked because I love your questions. We have some other things going on, which we'd love to see you at. We have a health and wellbeing webinar on the 16th of June, how to create a happy workforce. All sounds very ideal and idealistic, but we'll share our experiences on that. We do run a HR drop-in surgery every week, which you're very welcome to come along. That's free. And you're welcome to come and talk to me or the team and ask various questions, or just have some space where you might want to discuss particular people issues. And most excitingly, we are starting our management training program in July, 6-module program, which covers all of the basics that I've talked about today and much, much more. So, and that's being led by me, who amongst other things, I'm also a qualified management trainer. So watch out for more information from us on that. Okay, so I think I didn't want to rush, but I think I don't also want to draw everything out. Please feel free to share any questions that you might have, any other comments you might want to make in the chat. Otherwise, if you don't have questions, then it's been brilliant to see you. Thanks again for coming along. It's always a delight to see everybody, and just don't hesitate to reach out if we can help with anything. Thanks, everybody.